Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us. This is Erik and Erik, Tiger Football Talk. I'm your host, Erik New. We are two Clemson grads who love nothing more than to talk a little more about Clemson football. And we're excited because this week on Thursday is the NFL draft. And honestly, personally, as a college football fan, I love the NFL draft. I love seeing teams trade up. We saw the 49ers trade up to the third overall pick. They obviously have a player in mind. I love seeing trades. I love seeing players that set the college football world on fire, like Devontae Smith last year. I love seeing where they're going to go. As a college football fan, but not necessarily the biggest NFL fan, I think the draft is just one of my favorite things, even about college football, even though it doesn't necessarily relate too much to it. And honestly, selfishly, each year, I've been some of the guys that we're going to talk about in just a few minutes. Like, we've seen these Clemson players play for years, and it's exciting to see where they're going to call home for the next bit. We know where Trevor Lawrence is going to go, but everybody after that's a question mark. For me, that's just my favorite part about the draft. Erik, what's your favorite part?
Yeah, I love seeing all of our, especially the guys that we've been following for years and years and years at Clemson, move on to the next level, see where they're going to go, see how they're going to fit in. But it's so amazing to me, too, how much time between the end of college football this year to the draft every year we are debating on where these players are going to go, who's going to trade up, who's going to trade down, who's going to trade for draft picks. We saw Sam Darnold go to the Panthers to get traded for 3 draft picks, and now the Jets need a QB. So that's always very interesting to me, and we can guess all we want, but we won't really know until Thursday night when the draft kicks off, and then we can start seeing who picks who. But my best part of the draft by far is watching Roger Goodell walk out on the stage and be booed by every single NFL fan out there. It's probably my favorite part of the draft. I'm looking forward to it again this year, whether it's virtual or not. That's definitely the highlight.
It's one of those things that regardless of what side of the spectrum you are on anything, everyone can come together on one night and boo one man. And it's just happened for 20 years. Like, I don't think I know an NFL draft where he doesn't get booed. And he's just expects it. He's never upset by it. It's been happening for 2 decades. He's just like, yes, all right, come on, let's get over with it. It's just fantastic the way he just takes it. He's like, okay, I'm just not very well liked. It doesn't matter. I make over $20 million a year. So be it.
Yep.
It's just awesome. All right, well, we're going to go ahead and jump in. We're going to talk about the 5 Clemson players who should be expected to be drafted later on this week. I'm not going to take a lot of time talking about the first one. Anyone who says that Trevor Lawrence is not the number 1 pick in the NFL draft is just trying to do clickbait, just trying to bring attention on themselves, because Trevor Lawrence is a once-in-a-generation prospect, the greatest prospect since Andrew Luck. So, he's going to go number 1 overall Jacksonville Jaguars. He is the reason why Urban Meyer came out of coaching retirement to be in the NFL. Do you have anything you want to add to Trevor Lawrence going to Jacksonville Jaguars?
Man, he definitely deserves to go number 1. It seems like he's going to go to number 1, but you just never know. Again, not to be clickbait, but you just never know. The draft is insane when it comes to this. There have been tossed around all different QBs that are in this draft. But yeah, I definitely expect Trevor Lawrence to be the first pick off the board, and I expect it to be a pretty quick pick.
Yeah, it's going to be real fast. So, all right, well, let's move on to, I think the player that I'm most excited to talk about is going to be Travis Etienne. He's the most productive running back coming out of Clemson. He's 5'10", 205 pounds, really worked on his catching skills this past year. Break down Travis Etienne a little bit for me.
Yeah, Etienne came out of Louisiana. We kind of stole him from LSU back, if everyone remembers, back freshman year. And at his time at Clemson, he's rushed for over 5,000 yards with an average of 7.2 yards per carry and 70 rushing touchdowns. This guy was a baller. We all know it. And in his junior and senior years, he really worked developing his dual threat running back abilities to be a catcher as well. He accumulated over 1,000 yards receiving with 8 touchdowns, and most of that came in his last 2 years. Excited to see where he goes in this draft and which team picks him up and how they utilize him in the NFL.
Yeah, you and I were both there for, I think, C.J. Spiller's last year, and we just never thought any running back could be as electric C.J. Spiller. And, Travis Etienne came in just from his freshman year, was fantastic and broke so many of C.J. Spiller's records and so many ACC records as well. So right now, the Vegas odds have an over-under on him as 34.5, which means they expect him to be the second or third pick in the second round. So they think he's going to fall to that second round. We know it's difficult for a running back to be drafted in the first round nowadays. And some major teams to consider would be the Bills, who are 30th overall pick. You got the Buccaneers, who are 32nd overall. And then you have the Jets, who are 34, which is in round 2. And then the Falcons and Dolphins follow right after that. So Bills, Bucks, Jets, Falcons, Dolphins. Of those teams, which one do you think ends up drafting Travis Etienne?
I'm going to go out on a limb here and actually pick a team that you skipped over, which is pick number 33, Jacksonville Jaguars. And we just talked about them a second ago with Trevor Lawrence. And with Urban Meyer coming out of retirement to coach again, this is a really interesting pick for me because I think keeping Travis Etienne and Trevor Lawrence together, and this option is on the table. Like, this is exactly where Etienne might fall in the draft, early second round. And yeah, the Jacksonville Jaguars have James Robinson. He was huge last year. But beyond that, they have no depth at running back. And the fact of the matter is, James Robinson and Etienne can both play either first down backs or third down backs. So you get some depth, you get some running back rotation, and you keep the two best players in the college football team together in the NFL. I mean, keep an eye out for it. I think he could go that high. I also think he could even go even higher at 24th to the Steelers. I know, I just said a running back would go in the first round. But the Steelers have a need here, and Etienne is a once-in-a-generational running back that can do both, run the ball up the middle, and also catch the ball out wide. I'm interested to see where Etienne goes.
Yeah, honestly, I'm not going to disagree with you on the Steelers. I think the Steelers and Najee Harris have been pretty well linked. Most draft analysts have Harris going above Etienne. I'm going to argue that Etienne's a more explosive player, better pass catcher as well, and you got to see what Etienne was like behind a subpar Clemson line. You don't know what Najee Harris is like behind a subpar line because he had the best offensive line in the country. I strongly believe the Steelers are going to draft a running back. I think that will be Harris. So that's why I skipped over the Steelers. But the Steelers do end up picking Etienne. I would not be totally surprised. The Jaguars would be a surprising pick. You talk about James Robinson. He's a cheap player. He's an undrafted rookie who went over 1,000 yards. But at the same time, if you want to make Trevor Lawrence comfortable, bring in Travis Etienne. For me personally, when I was looking at it, I'm going to go with the Bills because that is just one area the Bills have not been able to figure out. They had a great year last year. Stephon Diggs coming over really opened up the entire passing attack. But for 2 years in a row, they drafted a running back in the third round. It was Singletary and then Zach Moss in back-to-back years. And honestly, neither one have worked out. Neither one are explosive. Neither one are great at catching passes out of the backfield. And just they don't look like a long-term solution. And so if they do take Travis Etienne, it'll be a third time in 3 years that they've taken a running back. But I think they finally learned their mistake, which is trying to wait and grab a running back in the third round is not going to work. You need to get one of the top 3 or 4 running backs, get an explosive one, get Travis Etienne, and then you can finally run the ball. You can finally have a home run hitter to match up with your high-flying offense.
Yeah, and I'm going to add to that real quick. I think that would be a really smart pick by the Bills because Josh Allen, as amazing as he is, and I love that Bills team under Josh Allen, he needs some help at running back because he cannot continue to be the rushing leader for that team. He's going to get banged up. He's got an arm for days. There's no reason that they need to keep running him the way they do. This would be a very smart pick for the Bills.
Yeah, and not to talk about Josh Allen's development or something like that, but like look at Cam Newton. He was hit too many times. I don't want to make too many comparisons because Josh Allen really advanced as an accurate passer. But let him stay in the pocket, let someone else take those hits, and just get an easy touchdown. You can get a 60-yard touchdown with Travis Etienne. You're not going to get that with Zach Moss. I'm sorry. All right, let's move on to Amari Rodgers. So wide receiver, 5'10", 210 pounds. Really just a workhorse wide receiver for Clemson the last 4 or 5 years. Can you break him down for me?
Yeah, this was an interesting turnaround story, really, for Amari Rodgers. He tore his ACL sophomore year of college at Clemson, tore it and came back within a year. I mean, it was incredible. He was on the field for the second game his junior season, and he accumulated over 2,000 receiving yards at an average of 11.8 yards per catch and 15 touchdowns throughout his time at Clemson. And I would say his last 2 years, really after tearing his ACL, was where he really became electric. He became a deep threat. He was huge in the slot. He was huge at punt returner. he's really utilized all over the field. And this is a position where we've seen Clemson players drafted before in the NFL to go into this punt returner, mixed bag use, kind of all around offensive returner receiver category. So this is another player that's going to be interesting to see which teams see his potential and how they fit into those schemes.
Yeah, watching him he tore his ACL in March and came back for the second game of the year, but came back and then had over 100 yards receiving against Syracuse, which Clemson had lost to the year before. So you talk about just determination to come back because he wanted to play in that game because the last time we played that team, they upset us. So, just incredible player. The projection for him is late second round. I think it's a little high. I think more likely you're going to see him in the third round. When you're talking about wide receiver in the second and third round, it's hard to really nail down a team, but some of the ones that we're most linked to and are just obvious would be the Steelers, the Saints, the Titans, and the Packers. So do you see him going to any of these teams, or do you see him going to a different team?
I'm going to buck grade again with you, man. I believe Amari could go as high as number 56. I know that's probably as high as he'll go, and that's a pretty high projection for him. But that pick puts him in line to go to the Seahawks. And honestly, if you look at this team and what they need for their offense, he's a perfect fit. I mean, he's the only thing that they're missing on wide receiver is a true slot guy. And Russell Wilson's ability to scramble with Amari's ability to be small and scat and run around. I mean, I think that this could be a really great fit. And I'd be curious to see if the Seahawks will take the risk on him and take him as high as 56.
See, it's interesting you say that because I have to argue the opposite point because a player we're going to mention next is one who I think the Seahawks will draft in the exact same spot for the complete opposite reason. The reason my argument against the Seahawks is they just fired their offensive coordinator because they let Russ cook. He was throwing the ball too much. They want to go back to running the ball and all this sort of stuff. So I can't imagine they say they want to run the ball. Oh, we're going to draft a wide receiver in the second round. But at the same time, you need weapons for Russell Wilson. That's what whether it's a lineman, a running back, maybe wide receiver. You need more weapons. DK Metcalf, just took the league by storm last year. So another great option. He was a second round guy. So just give him more weapons. Can't disagree with it. I'm going to say the Green Bay Packers. If you're looking for a team that needs an additional wide receiver that likely won't spend a first-round prospect on one, that's the Green Bay Packers. Because no team is going to go, first-round wide receiver, second-round wide receiver. So you're looking for a team that has a need at wide receiver, but most likely won't get one of those top guys. And the Green Bay Packers never want to do anything in the first round for their offense. I don't think they've drafted an offensive player since 2012. Besides the quarterback they did last year, but I'm talking about an offensive weapon. You look at them, they have the 62nd and 92 overall pick. They might draft him with that second round, 62nd overall pick, but he may end up falling to the third round. But I think that's just a player that you could see hooking up with Aaron Rodgers and doing extremely well. And again, the Packers just need one more playmaker on offense because the running back room is stacked. They need one more wide receiver to really step up.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think the Green Bay Packers do have some young guys with Lazard out there. I think the interesting thing for me when it comes to Amari is how much talent he does have. And I'm curious to see what these NFL teams do if they try to take him early or if they try to see if they wait to see if he falls. And if they're waiting, is some other team going to pick him up in between? Mm-hmm. Like you said, 62 and 92 for the Green Bay Packers. If they pass on him at 62, that's a lot more picks to go before 92 shows up. Interested to see if some other team might swoop in and steal him.
Agreed. So the next player is Jackson Carman. So he was a big-time get for Clemson years ago. Offensive tackle, and he's one of those guys, when he walks off the bus, he looks the part. He's 6'5", he's 317 pounds, former five-star prospect. But there's been some conversations if he's long enough to be a tackle, if he needs to move into a guard position. But give me a little bit of background on Jackson Carman.
Yeah, Jackson Carman was a top 20 overall player coming out of college, coming out of the state of Ohio, who Dabo Swinney won this recruit over Urban Meyer for Ohio State and brought him to Clemson. This was a huge get for Clemson at the time. He's played in 40 games at Clemson and started each of the last 27 games of his career. He's earned the AP All-Bowl selection for his play against Chase Young in the 2020 Fiesta Bowl over Ohio State. Interestingly enough, though, Jackson Carman did not participate at the Clemson Pro Day this past month. And it's going to be interesting because I've heard a lot about the fact that might hurt his draft stock. He did not have a great senior year because the Clemson offensive line was very young. And dealing with COVID, the offensive line never really gelled this past year. But his junior year, he was huge. Seeing mixed things about Jackson Carman. Very interested to see where the NFL teams see him going.
Yeah, I think he had surgery on his back maybe in the offseason. There was a reason why he missed that pro day. And this is one of those that's going to be really hard to predict. It's saying that he's a late second round, early third round option. To me, it seems a little aggressive. I would have pictured more third or fourth. The upside for this man is tremendous. But the fact that people are questioning what position he's going to play, the fact that he individually, I think he had an okay senior year, but if you're a strong, aggressive running tackle, but the rest of your offensive line doesn't gel, you don't really get to spotlight that. It's easier to tell if you're a great lineman, if you're good at pass protecting as a tackle, and that's not necessarily his strength. His strength is being a run-dominant, aggressive, downhill sort of blocker. I would say that the teams to consider here are going to be the Bears, Steelers, who are trying to remake their running game, Bengals. You just saw Joe Burrow go down with an injury last year. They have to protect him. The Texans, I think the Texans officially have holes everywhere on their roster. And then the Seahawks as well. So is there a team there that you think he's going to go with, or do you think he's going to go outside of those?
Yeah, and I think, we've talked about this a lot in terms of this transition for offensive linemen from the college to the NFL, and even from high school to college. If you look at some of our recruiting videos, we talk about this a lot. It's a very hard position to transfer from one league to the next. Like you said, there's a lot of uncertainty when it comes to Jackson Carman. But I actually have Jackson Carman going as high as round 3, pick 66 to the Jets. And I'm saying this because the Jets just traded Sam Darnold away to the Carolina Panthers for 3 picks. There's a huge assumption that they're going to pick Zach Wilson as QB for their new QB with probably the second or third pick of the draft. And they're going to need to protect him. And I think showing Zach that they're trying to by taking an offensive lineman in the third round is going to be big for them. I'm hopeful that Jackson Carman does make this transition well, because the Jets seriously need some help with their offensive line and their quarterback. Yeah,
they do. If you're going to spend the second overall pick on a quarterback, you need to give them weapons. You need to protect them. They had some wide receivers from last year. The wide receiving crew isn't terrible. They could upgrade their defense. But again, if you're going to spend the second overall pick on what you believe is the quarterback of the future, at least block the guy. Don't let him get hit as much as Sam Darnold gets hit. I'm going to go with the Seattle Seahawks. Again, the complete opposite argument you made for Amari Rodgers. I think they want to run the football as much as they possibly can. Jackson Carman is a massive body. I think if you can get him in the third round as a great run blocker, a great tackle. Russell Wilson, the entire offseason, just kind of belittled his offensive line, saying that they need to make this a priority. If you're able to get Jackson Carman in the second or the third round, a former 5-star, went to Clemson, great pedigree, and he has great highlights on his tape. I think it satisfies Russell Wilson. I think the entire fan base is happy with it. And most importantly, your new offensive coordinator who wants to run the football, I think is me, jockeying for this guy as well. So I think it ticks all the marks to see the Seahawks get him as early as the second round, but we'll see where he lands. Let's go next to Cornell Powell. He's going to be the last person that we're going to be talking about. With this past year, you had the opportunity to come back instead of go to the NFL draft, and a lot of players took advantage of that, especially on our defensive side. So Cornell Powell, he's wide receiver. You're basically kind of MVP of our wide receiver corps from this past season. He's 6 foot, 204 pounds. I put the 40-yard dash in there. He did a 4.53. I think some people thought he might come out a little bit slower than that, but 4.53 is respectable. But give me a little background on Cornell Powell.
Yeah, Cornell Powell was a top 50 prospect coming out of college, but was buried in the depth chart due to Clemson's talent at that position. I mean, Clemson has been called wide receiver U for a while now, and due to injuries, he really did not take the field until his last year, and he took every bit of that and turned it into 53 receptions for 882 receiving yards and 7 touchdowns to go with an all ACC honors. He was honestly one of the true outlets for Trevor Lawrence. and it was a huge for Clemson in this past year. And honestly, it really kind of jolted him up into being draftable. I mean, for the longest time, a lot of these players for Clemson that are further down in the wide receiver depth chart typically go undrafted or go in free agency. But we're talking about Cornell Powell here seriously in the draft contention. So let's get into seeing where he potentially will go.
Yeah, so they're considering him a day 3 pick, ranging from like round 5 to 7. Now listen, the further down you get in these rounds, the harder it is to predict, because at this point in time, it's not necessarily about your need; it's about how you view the player. So, some of the teams, basically those who might need a wide receiver, you're looking at the Eagles, the Patriots, Vikings, Lions, Saints, and Titans are the ones I'm going to throw out there. Where do you think he's going to end up going?
Yeah, this is another one that I have going probably higher than he will end up going. But I think that the Minnesota Vikings at round 4, pick 125, would be an intriguing spot for him to land. With veteran Kirk Cousins at QB, you got wide receivers Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson. I think Cornell could provide some depth at this position and also some rotation possibilities to get Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson into different looks on this offense. Minnesota Vikings just hit a home run last year with Justin Jefferson. Why not take another swing for another, maybe overlooked wide receiver that can really help this Minnesota Vikings offense? And I think Cornell Powell might be that guy for him.
Yeah, Justin Jefferson, like you mentioned, was absolutely fantastic for the Vikings last year. And I'm just happy for Cornell Powell. Somebody who just stayed with the program, could have transferred at any point in time, was a highly rated prospect. The fact that he stuck it out, had a great year, honestly, just so happy for him. The way I'm looking at it, and I'm probably wrong in this pick, but it makes sense from one perspective. I'm going to say the Patriots. The Patriots are notoriously bad at drafting wide receivers, especially in their earlier rounds. They just never pan out. And the Patriots just overpaid for 2, I would say, mediocre free agents at wide receiver this past season as well. But if you think about Cam Newton, he did best when he had Kelvin Benjamin, a big-bodied wide receiver. He could just throw the ball up to, and he would come down and get it. Cam Newton's not an accurate passer, so I don't think getting Cam Newton a speedy wide receiver is great if you can't hit him in stride. So Cornell Powell I think, is a person who obviously can go up and make contested catches, has great hands. Even though the Patriot system is really difficult to come in and start right away, even though they brought in this extra talent, he is the sort of wide receiver that I can see Cam Newton going to, his team being like, yo, I want this guy drafted. And at this point in time, if you get him in the 6th or 7th round, you're taking a flyer on a wide receiver, why not? I just think he's the type of wide receiver that Cam Newton needs to be throwing the ball to.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing for me when it comes to Cornell Powell is, one, kudos to him for taking his time at Clemson and turning it into looking like he's going to get drafted into the NFL. To me, it doesn't really matter if he gets drafted in round 4 or round 7. I think he will make it in the NFL. I think he's got the talent to do so. But more than anything, I think this helps Clemson in the recruiting. We've always talked about the fact that it's hard to recruit talent, especially when we've got 5 stars there and these 5 stars potentially coming in not being able to play right away. But Cornell Powell is the exact epitome of what Dabo loves. It's having a guy come in, buy into the program, buy into the culture, bide his time, learn from the best, and hey, when you get your shot, you take it, and he did, and here he is. He's going to be in the NFL as of Thursday.
It just shows how deep Clemson is. I mean, this is a talented guy who just couldn't crack it because you have Higgins and Williams and Ross and Ladson and you just have so many players here who can play ball, and all he needed was an opportunity to get in the field. And I mean, you talk about the back half of the field. I mean, I think he had 4 or 5 games in a row over 100 yards. He was huge against Notre Dame twice. I mean, just a great player for us down the stretch. Once he started getting confident, he was impossible to stop. He was just such a great wide receiver for us. Happy that he gets the opportunity. Really am, no matter where he goes. But we'll end up seeing. Anything else you want to add?
No, I mean, let's look forward to Thursday night NFL draft. Looking forward to seeing where these 5 Clemson players for our senior year end up going in this draft. I think we've kind of broken down our thoughts on it, but as everyone knows, it's anyone's game, and we'll only find out Thursday night. So tune into the NFL draft, boo Roger Goodell, and have fun with all the fans.
Absolutely. And if you liked us, like and subscribe. We really appreciate it. That it helps us out. We'll be posting some videos over the course of this offseason, gearing up for the Georgia game. So make sure to like, subscribe, and check back with us. And more than anything, go Tigers.
Go Tigers.